Whereabouts?
And then once that person's
Okay, so we'll get started now. So, welcome everyone to the second talk of this evening on getting started with public speaking with myself, Keir, Bowden, MVP, CTO of BrightGen, Certified Technical Architect, and who was here at the last meetup last month? And do you remember that I talked to that one? Yeah. Do you remember what I said at the end? I said, if you don't start volunteering to talk, you're going to have to listen to me again. And here we are, a month later, and it's your own fault, is all I can say.
So you're threatening now, Keir. Now that Keir has finished his really long-winded introduction of himself, I am Jodi Wagner, and Keir and I both teach a class called Speaker Academy. Anybody ever heard of it? Yeah. All right, the people who have graduated definitely better be raising their hands. Okay.
You won't die. So, many studies have shown that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. I don't think that actually means that people would prefer to die than to public speak. I think that's more of an indication that you don't really think about death too much because it's going to happen to you and there's nothing you can do. People have died while speaking in public, but it wasn't as a result of their public speaking. It was basically that somebody already wanted them dead, and being up on stage in front with no one in front of them made them a really easy target. So they were killed, but it wasn't the public speaking that caused that. So remember that.
So there's actually a famous Jerry Seinfeld quote. People are afraid of 1, giving the eulogy, 2, dying. You would rather die than give a eulogy, which means standing up in front of us, in front of you guys. So in terms of public speaking, what's stopping you? You really won't have an anxiety attack or death. This is like a theme.
It's reassurance, you will not die. It's fine.
Basically, you won't die. That's all you need to take away from tonight. So one of the things that we talk about in our Speaker Academy class a lot is imposter syndrome. So what imposter syndrome really is all around feeling like a fraud. So one of the things that I experienced for my first Salesforce talk ever was, which was with, where did Francis go? With him. He dragged me up in front of a user group. One of the things is that people constantly feel like when they get up in front of an audience, someone's going to heckle them or say, is that really true? Or, well, that's a load of rubbish. So that's what imposter syndrome refers to. It's just feeling like someone's going to constantly call you out. They're going to say you're a fraud. It's this persistent fear. Generally, in my experience, I don't know about yours, I haven't had anybody heckle me yet. Yeah, but that's practice. What's that? You're too scared. Because we're too scared. And don't you forget it.
But your audience typically want you to succeed. No one goes along to a talk hoping it's going to be awful and they can complain and throw fruit and run tomatoes. The worst you'll probably experience is if you're at an event like Dreamforce, where there's loads of things going on at the same time, people realise 5 minutes in that actually this isn't the talk for them, and they get up and walk out. And the door bangs behind them, and I've seen speakers stop dead, and we kind of all track them out the room, and the door bangs, and they kind of come back to the room and carry on talking, so try and avoid that if you can as well.
You basically have to pretend like whatever's going on in front of you, so if somebody's like talking on their phone, half the time at Dreamforce, they're just at your talk because it's a place to sit and they can eat lunch. But in terms of imposter syndrome, it's just not limited to women. I know that's a major misconception that it's only women that suffer from imposter syndrome. But I've talked to many of the guys that have taken our class that have said they were afraid of the same things. So one of the things that we do is just talk about how you can kind of get over that, like knowing your subject matter, really kind of honing those skills, and really people just won't heckle you. I mean, Keir will, but that's it. So this is one of my favorite quotes. There are 2 kinds of speakers, those that are nervous and those that are liars. Most people get really, really nervous in front of people. I do all the time. I usually take a few minutes to try to get in a zen state if I'm delivering a talk. I don't know what you do, but yoga, drink.
I'm certainly drinking tonight as well, so I don't know.
So it's natural. It's really natural to be nervous in front of people. Like our primitive, natural state is to not separate ourselves from the pack. So that's just pretty natural, and we talk about that a lot.
So this is a really common reason, really common reasons why people don't want to do this. People don't want to public speak. A big one is they feel they've got nothing to say. Everything's already been said. Someone's already done a presentation about SFDX 2 years ago. Which may be true, but everyone learns at their own pace, so not everyone is going to be at that point that that particular talk was pitched. People could be at different positions, there may not be an introduction. People may just want to come and hear the same thing over and over again. Repetition does aid learning, especially if it's slightly different each time, if it's somebody else's unique point of view. And your experience is unique, so there's only, it's a cliche, but there is only one you, only one person has been through been on your journey, only one person has arrived where you arrived at. So the talk we were hearing earlier on about how that Datadog got to their lovely cake, that's going to be unique to them. Other people have done similar things, but they're not going to have done anything exactly the same as Datadog. So that's really always really worth hearing. And also, this is really true in the Salesforce world. I was just talking about this in Rad actually. Content decays over time. If you go back and look at some recorded sessions of the Developer 401 course back in 2010, and if you looked at that even 2 years later, it was all massively out of date because the platform had come on so much. There's so many better ways of doing it. So just because there is a talk out there that may be recorded or there's a bunch of blog posts out there that cover the topic, that doesn't mean it's necessarily particularly apposite, doesn't mean it's particularly appropriate at this moment in time. So, don't let any of that stop you. It's a pretty given subject. It's not like there was one talk that was given and everybody in the world went to it and they all know everything and there's no point in you telling anybody anything.
So one of our favorite talks, well, I don't know about you, but it was one of my favorite talks, is from one of our past students, Julia Doctoroff, where she talked about, she had done something in her org and she was really excited about it, and she found out like 3 weeks later she forgot to change a setting and found out that everything was getting approved and nothing was going through the appropriate approval process. So that really kind of ties to your experience is unique. And we really, really love, as you're sitting in the audience, one of the things that works out really well is telling a story. And we really love when people take us on that journey with them. And a good triumph over adversity story is always great. So you're like listening to it, like, yeah, you figured that out, and
Or a really good war story where there's no scars, like how I deleted this production database and we all had to work the weekend to recover it. I tell you, that people love that. It's comedy.
10,000 Salesforce story for you. So the way something is presented will define the way you react to it. So this is, I think, for me, this is one of my favorite parts of delivering this course. You guys see the way Keir's standing? He inspires zero enthusiasm right now.
It's kind of a thing.
And the way we teach the course is that Keir and I are sort of like yin and yang, because as you can tell, the hands are going. I'm more demonstrative, a little bit more peppy. Where Keir's just like, yep. And that's all I'm saying.
Because I normally talk to developers and we're just saying, look at this sweet code, let's all look at that code, and here's another sweet code, some more sweet code, and that's all we need. We don't need any bells and whistles.
As Amanda said, yes we do.
Talk to developers, I said. So if you're gonna talk, if you decide you want to talk at an event, let's say it's something like the London World Tour. It doesn't really matter what you do, people just won't pick you anyway, but enough of that business.
Better? Everyone?
So it's not just about the idea, it's not just about the talk. There's the old saying is you only get one chance to make a first impression. So you need to write a decent bio. You need to write a bio that makes you sound like an interesting person that people might want to come along and hear a story from. You don't just want it to be completely dry list of accomplishments, you want a little bit of pizzazz about it. You need to pick a title. You want a title that's going to fly off the page, and you want a title that's tweetable. That's a real key thing. It used to be a real challenge to pick something that could be tweeted with a hashtag in 140 characters. Now that Twitter have relaxed that limit, it's a little bit easier. But you still want something snappy, something that people are going to remember. And you want a killer abstract. You really do want a killer abstract, because that's what's going to be read by the people who are judging whether or not they're going to pick your talk for their event. So that really needs to, again, leap off the page. That needs to inspire. There needs to be what people are going to learn, what their takeaways are going to be, how their life is going to be made better, how we're making the world a better place through this particular talk.
So many times when you do say you're going to present something, they ask you for your slides first. This frustrates the heck out of me because I don't think this way. And when we run Speaker Academy, we definitely don't teach people to think this way. Because you really want to think about what you're trying to do. what I generally do is sort of like write out that story and figure out what that message is. I also really hate PowerPoint tricks, so you will never see a talk that I do with something zooming on a screen. You won't see crazy animations. It just really drives me crazy. So we definitely say avoid those. And I don't know if anybody's ever been actually using animations and you're kind of clicking through and you totally forget and you're like, why is this not going to the next slide? So you want to avoid any of that stuff. And less is more. So one of the tips, and I know this is one of your big ones, is you can start off with like 50 slides. And as you kind of like go through and the more you actually practice your talk, it gives you an opportunity to whittle that down. Maybe you don't need 50 slides. Maybe you could say it in 27. But
Indeed, cut and cut again, never be afraid to cut.
Exactly. Remember, less is more, and no PowerPoint tricks.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. Poor old Bill, eh? As about you, well, that looks to me like a picture that's been designed by a committee. Everybody on that committee wanted their little bit in there. Hey, we do Office has got to be in there. Hey, we do Microsoft Xbox Live, that's got to be in there. We have all these devices, that's got to be in there. And Bill, being a nice guy, would have been saying, okay, yeah, we'll put that in, we'll put that in, we'll put that in, and then he's standing in front of this car crash. And you've got Steve Jobs, who would have said, I don't really care what any of you want. I know what I want a picture of the iPhone, that's all we're having, and nobody else's opinion really counts here. But I think of those two pictures, which one's the easiest to look at and pick the message out of? I think the Microsoft Live platform, this is a classic thing of just having so much information on there. If you stood up with a slide like that, and I guarantee you no one's listening to you, they're all reading, they're all working their way through it, and then at the end of it, they'll look up at you and think, oh, what are they talking about? They're talking about something, weren't they still? Look at all those words.
So that's our functional cake, right?
Absolutely.
That's our feeling cake.
You want the picture to enhance what you're trying to say. You don't want it to like completely take everything over.
This is my quote. I think this is one of the best quotes I've ever seen around public speaking. Hopefully let's prepare for the worst. Try and visualise it's all going to go really well. Try and make sure you've done everything you possibly can to ensure that when things inevitably fail, that you're okay. So make sure that you've got backup copies of everything, make sure you've got your own machine. If you're doing a live demo, then you could make sure you've got an alternative to that. It may be a video, it may be something to talk around, but make sure that if the internet goes down, you're not suddenly going, well, imagine if I'd logged into Salesforce, and we all know Salesforce and there's something here. That's never going to really cut it. You need to make sure that you've kind of planned for all those eventualities. Hopefully none of them will happen, but if they do, it means you won't be phased because you've got enough things to worry about as it is.
So one of my favorite tips, and I know I get ridiculed for this by Keir, is that I generally will take what I'm going to be speaking about. If I'm doing a demo, I will actually record the demo. So I won't record my voice, but basically I'll be, stop it. I will be saying the talk track as I'm navigating and typing and using like QuickTime or another type of software where it records everything. So in case I'm unable to give my demo, I can then hit play and be able to see what happened. And I've seen where that's actually really helpful.
But it's not in case you can't give your demo. You have no intention of giving your demo. This is where we differ.
I did it once.
Also, if a live demo does go wrong, that kind of gets the audience on your side as well. It's not necessarily a catastrophe. As long as you can continue the talk, it's not necessarily a disaster.
Right. So back to prepare for the worst. Have extra stuff and have that ability to kind of be a little campy and be like, oh yeah, it kind of broke, but it could look like this.
And that's where the preparation comes from. If you know your talk like the back of your hand, then if something goes wrong, you're not going to be phased because you know what was going to go in. If you're relying on seeing things, seeing visual cues to make you remember, if you're not appropriately prepared, that's where you're going to struggle.
That was a great segue. So preparation, preparation, preparation.
3 Ps. Yeah, absolutely. I always say there's one area that no man has ever bested me, and that's homework. So if I'm going to do a talk, then you can guarantee I will have practiced it. I won't necessarily practice it out loud. I won't necessarily have timed myself and recorded myself. Sometimes I'll do that, sometimes I won't. But I'll have been through the content many, many times, so it's very familiar. I'll have been through the content in front of me, I'll have the slide deck, I'll be running through it kind of silently in my head, maybe when I'm on the train. But I will have, before I give a talk, I will have been through it probably, something like a world tour talk, I'll have been through it probably a dozen times. Sorry?
Is that how you got the suits? Yeah.
Sadly, there's nothing you can really do to prepare for the actual scenario they give you on CGA.
Have you prepared this evening?
We've given this talk loads of times, so all of this has been prepared many times in the past.
The charm in us presenting is that we bicker like an old married couple.
Yes.
So some do's and don'ts. Speak to the audience. I kind of cheated. I've been speaking to Keir a little bit, but I haven't seen him in a while.
But you're not speaking to your slides.
Yes, speak
That's
to the
not really
audience.
good. If you do that, that kind of really doesn't engage the audience very well at all.
Be audible. Don't rush. We have a tendency, because of the fact that we're up in front of people, to speak as fast as possible. And I used to do that. I think I've taken 3 public speaking classes before I actually got up and spoke in front of anybody. And I was speaking really, really fast, and really could understand me. Because then I was done in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. I want to get this over and get off. No one's going to enjoy it, least of all me. Let's get out of the way and get moving.
And make sure you're not saying there, don't put the wall of text there, so you're like, and this and that, and you're just reading your slides. Because you know what? They can read your slides, and you are superfluous.
One last point on that as well. Handheld microphones, always a bit of a challenge. It's really easy to say, and here's an absolutely key point, if you're ever public speaking. And I think on that we can all be agreed that that's the key takeaway. So remember, if you've got this, your arm needs to be fixed to your side and it needs to come with you the whole time.
Did I do
Feel like a
that?
stand-up comedian.
Did I do that?
Heaven forfend.
So before we actually close, there was a couple of things we wanted to mention. The reason why public speaking is really important, and one of the reasons why we started doing this class, is because we found the same people all the time at World Tour, just user groups. We found the same people always speaking. And
I was one of those, so it wasn't all bad, but it did feel a bit like we could have 1 or 2 more.
yeah, well, this is your second month speaking. And you threatened to keep speaking until somebody else volunteers.
This is true. You're only making it worse for yourselves.
So it was the same people all the time. And we definitely noticed there was a difference. There were more men than women speaking. So we started Speaker Academy to try to get more people speaking, to try to, help change that dynamic. I see a number of people that have taken our class here, people who have expressed interest. But there's also another really important reason. Public speaking is a really helpful skill in terms of career development. It doesn't matter what job you're in, even if you're just like, hey, I'm a lowly developer, like nobody's really talking to me, you're going to need to be able to articulate what you've just built, what you've done, and you probably don't want to be just a developer forever. You want to try to expand your career. I mean, even Keir speaks in front of people.
Almost continuously.
So, as you go through and you in your career, public speaking is a really, really helpful tool. So that's part of what we do. So with Speaker Academy, our program is 6 weeks. The last one is actually giving your presentation.
There you go. That's what
How
we've
you're
done.
going to do it.
No.
Preparation's key.
Absolutely. Preparation. Yeah, so we do a talk like this around getting started. We've kind of done some of the choosing a talk and a little bit of building a talk as well on that. So we have basically, it starts off with us kind of teaching quite a bit, and we make people speak a little bit. And then we teach slightly less and make them talk a bit more. And then we teach a bit less and make them speak a bit more. And then we don't do any teaching, we make them speak. And then I tell them they're great, Jodi tells them they're terrible. It's kind of the way we work, good cop, bad cop. And then they
I'm
do
sorry,
it
you
again.
did what?
And I'm really supportive of Jodi's again, very negative.
I'm sorry, what?
That seems to bring people through. And then the final one, it's really interesting as we go through this because people get more and more comfortable with presenting, but that's within their little cohort. So kind of they go all the way up and then they realise their final one presenting is going to be something like this, and it kind of goes a little bit down, everyone gets a bit nervous, and we have to bring them up again at that point in time.
They all bond. They're all like in this traumatic, they all have like PTSD and they bond.
Any questions?
Yes, Richard.
Not a question, but if you're all...
That's it, there's questions, isn't it?
Question. Comments or later?
Got the answer. If you're going to reply to World Tour or Dreamforce, there's now a question on there about meeting your trackhead profile. So if you're going to talk about something like process builder, make sure you look at the badges first. That's why I keep saying.
That's more of a tip, and thank you.
Yes, Rob.
With your 6-week Speaker Academy course, what level of commitment do you need to put into it in terms of
time and...
Oh, I mean, it's only sort of each of those weeks is only about 8 hours. We start about 5 o'clock and we finish about 1 in the morning. So it's not too bad at all.
And there's homework.
Yeah, absolutely. It's homework. That'll only really take you the entire weekend. So just, you know, it's basically a month and a half out of your life. And then
Basically, yeah, pretend like it's a master's program.
It's typically, it's like an hour a week with a little bit of homework, but not a huge amount of homework because everyone's busy. So it's not intended to be something that's, you know, it's not intended to make things worse. It's to make things better.
Where it takes the most time is when you're actually starting to build out your talk. So, you know, we ask you to bring like 3 different abstracts and stuff. So that way, because what ends up happening is like, we want a variety of things, and you can just sort of, as you're reading the abstract, you can usually figure out, like, these are 2 throwaway topics, and you're really passionate about this one. So that's why we ask you to do the 3 different topics.
And everyone always wants to do trailhead as well.
Yeah.
That's a really popular subject.
Chris?
How do we find out more about this academy?
It's secret.
Oh.
First rule of Speaker Academy, we've broken it already, to be honest.
We do have a sign-up link, which I'll put on the meetup. We are about to actually start next week our first virtual class. So there's been a lot of requests. We were doing it locally. We did about 3-4 courses locally. And then there was a lot of requests for people in Ireland and Australia and the US. So we're going to try this virtually. We're going to see how this goes. We're going to get on WebEx, and we'll let you know how this goes in 6 weeks.
Yeah, this doesn't scale because it's basically, there are 6 people, there's the 2 of us, people give their talks and we give them feedback, so that can't scale. You can do it with a group like this unless we turn it into an 8-hour session and we'd all kill ourselves by the end of it, so there's no real upside in doing that. So we're doing this virtually, and then the idea is we'll try and expand that and do a bit of training the trainer and try and have other people offering this content as well.
Franchise it.
We can be hired for a day-long course at your facility. Just came up with that.
Very good.
Marketing. Any other questions? Comments? Yeah?
I mean, first of all, thanks for like kind of getting up there like kind of over and over again and keeping this alive. That's great. And so like my question is, what's the motivation to kind of get up there and to speak and become a public speaker for both of you really?
So for me, it was, I came along to the first few company developer meetups since they started. I came along to them and I thought I really should be getting up there. I want to raise my profile a bit. I really should be finding something to talk about. I went through exactly what Jodi was talking about. I was convinced it was going to be an absolute catastrophe. I was going to forget things, wasn't going to know what I was saying, everyone was going to get up and leave, people would be sighing, and of course none of that happened. And now I'm quite arrogant about everything. I don't, people don't like it, I don't really care. I'm going to get up and leave, that's fine. But it was very much about, I think for me it was very much about kind of a bit of career progression, a bit of raising my profile in the community that motivated me to do it. I still, every time I get a talk submitted and it's successful and I'm building it, it's come up to date, I think, why am I doing this again? Why do I put myself through it? Once you get up there, it's fine. It's just the sort of pre-match nerves, really, waiting for the worst.
I don't think mine was as planned out as yours. So my first user group that I spoke at, like I said, Francis dragged me up in front of the BrightGen user group to talk about report types. And then it just kind of like went from there. What I really like about teaching though is I get to see other people progress and see other people kind of like finding their voice and being able to articulate things, because there's so many people in this community that are absolutely brilliant, but they're shy, or they don't want to get up here, they sit in the back of the room. And that had always been me, and I did it, so I want to help other people with it.
And Jodi still listening to me as well.
Never.
Thank you for that. Yes, right. No, that's good. I'll talk about it then. So for his thing, his application, that's fine, I won't be there, they will, so you might storm the stage, is what I was worried about. But his application, he asked you to go and send an email to a particular address. And I was looking around, and everyone got on their phone, sent the email, and then thought, oh, loads of other emails, better read those. And then he was talking till he'd lost half the room. So, but having seen that, that's the kind of thing, every time we see anything, every time I see anything like that, I'll try and put that into the deck to make sure that we don't lose that. It's interesting, sometimes I'll go along to talks, especially at Dreamforce, because often there's like 8 talks I want to go to all at the same time, and then I've kind of got some gaps, and I haven't really got anything to do in that. So a lot of those talks I'll go to just to watch what the speakers are like, just to kind of see what their delivery is like. Hopefully, hoping that they'll be really good and I can learn something from them, but also I might learn what not to do.
We've added a lot of content in terms, well, added and refined the content. So I had gone to like TEDx London last year, and there was actually a speaker that was talking about public speaking, and I've been doing a lot of reading, and we refined the course that way. We talk about like hand gestures more, a little bit more about presence. So we thank you for being part of our first group. The next group, I think, had 15 people in it, and after the first one, I looked at Keir as we were walking out, and I said, what did we just do? Like, these people think we know things.
I think we also refine it based on the feedback we get as well. So after the first or the second, some of the feedback was people would prefer to do a second dry run and get more feedback. So that's why we kind of had the last couple of sessions of just basically everyone dry running and giving each other feedback.
We also stopped the one game that we were doing where we made people think of a word, and then you had to speak for a minute about that word, because I had never seen 15 pairs of deer in headlights looks at me. It was like, we have to what now? So we kind of stopped that, but that doesn't mean it might not come back.
So, let's say people are fairly confident they could. How might they go about speaking? Doug, last week. Could we give people some information who they should talk to if they want to speak here next month?
So the question is, if people want to speak at a developer user group, as in this event in next months, what should they do? Tell us, tell any of the organisers, post on the meetup group. Yeah, we'd really love it. There's no kind of selection process, there's no audition. The idea of this is run, we have the members speaking for the members. So if you've got something you want to talk about, then please, by all means, come and talk about it. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen. Next month it will be me again.
And this is a great place to start speaking. Like I said, user group was my first place that I started speaking at, because I think everybody here is really supportive of everybody. That's how the community runs, right? So the chances of you getting heckled here are probably a lot less than Dreamforce.
Unless Amanda's here.
Yay! I don't think she was heckling you a little.
Fair enough.
Actually, I do have a talk for you guys next month. Not with me. But yeah, Richard, Keir, myself, Todd, just let us know if you want to speak.
I think we do have some new speakers lined up for a bit later in the year, but everyone seems to need a bit of time to prepare and panic and suffer from imposter syndrome and all those good things that we talked about. It's always a good reason not to start.
Just to also say, if you talk to the admin group, don't feel it has to be a developer-only subject. The crossover is very narrow now between developer and admin, so it's about the process builder, there will be about 8 heads on individuals, might be components.
Doesn't have to be about Salesforce, I don't think. I don't think it hurts us to hear about anything really that's kind of work related or helps us to grow. Like, this isn't about Salesforce, for example. Cool. That's it, everyone.
I will make it.